Today, as the first tier of Shadowbringers comes to a close, I'd like to tell you a story. This is a story from the deepest, darkest corners of FF Logs. It is a story of determination, even in the face of unbelievable odds. It is a story of glory at the cost of unrivaled sacrifice. But above all, this is a story of greed. This is a story that has never seen the light of day. Until now. This is the story of perhaps the most forbidden healer Gearset ever created. This story, like many others, has humble beginnings. It starts with a man and a spreadsheet. If you were to check the Astrologian Best in Slot a few months ago, you'd find one particular Gearset that was labeled as the best. This was the Low Piety Best in Slot. It featured over 3100 crit and had a modest 1400 piety. If you happen to return to the spreadsheet a few weeks later, there at the bottom was a new Gearset. It read in all caps, Speed Kill Only BIS. It was both an invitation and a warning. It featured a necklace swap. Instead of taking the Deep Shadow piece, which has crit and piety, you'd now run the Eating Grace one, which had det and spell speed. The set featured slightly less crit and piety than the previous one, but it was worth it. Exchanging one damaging substat for two is always a good deal, as long as you can handle the piety loss. I picked up the set in an instant. But it wasn't long before I started to crave more. I wanted to do even more damage. I'd always looked longingly at the White Mage and Scholar list that featured sets with even less piety than the one I was wearing. What made those classes so special? I wanted to drop piety too. In the darkness of my FF Logs lair, piety was the sun creeping through my curtains, taunting me each and every day. I decided I had had enough. I was tired of being discriminated against. And in that moment, I made a decision that changed everything. Who are they that tell me that Astros had to wear those Eating Grace manacles? I cast aside my piety-infused shackles and slipped on the forbidden Deep Shadow bracelets of healing. In an instant, I felt the power of that spell speed flow through me, and I was filled with renewed determination to continue on my lonely path. I made it my mission to cast aside every piety-riddled piece I owned. I examined my inventory closely. Those boots simply had to go. I slunk my way over to the counter in Yulmore, where I demanded a replacement pair. Surely anything else would be better than the trash I was currently wearing. The clerk smiled and whipped out a pair of Deep Shadow Greaves of Healing, setting them on the counter in front of me. I chuckled inwardly. These boots hadn't been mentioned anywhere on the balance. Surely I was onto something here. I picked up the boots, and then gasped as a searing sensation ripped through my hands. Piety. Of course. It all made sense now. I stumbled away, gasping for breath. I returned to my lair to reflect on the horror of that evening, but that horror quickly turned to sorrow. What was I to do with two pairs of boots that were riddled with piety? Perhaps this was the end of the road for me. That night, in the throes of my despair, I was gifted with a vision. The copied factory appeared to me. 2B descended from the heavens and extended her arm to me. Zeke, my child, the chosen one. Worry not, your quest has only begun. You just need to open your eyes. I awoke in the dead of night. Not fully understanding, but wholeheartedly believing. I hit the button to queue for the 24-man raid. 45 minutes later, I did it again. And again. And again. And finally, after 6 soul-crushing hours, there they were in all of their resplendent glory. The Yorha Type 51 boots of healing. The answer to my question. I moused over the stats. High crit, low determination. Truly a combo blessed by the gods. I rolled like a man possessed. Need wasn't a strong enough word for what these boots meant to me. Luck was on my side, this time. I sighed with relief as the boots appeared in my inventory, and then on my feet. Here I was, at 807 piety. 3 digits of uncharted waters. A place where no Astro had ever dared to go before. You would think that this would be enough for me, but you'd be wrong. Even after exterminating all the piety from my gear, something still just didn't feel quite right. Even freed from my piety chains, I could still feel the establishment weighing down on me. I racked my brain, trying to figure out what it could be. And then it dawned on me. What did I have back in Stormblood that I didn't have now? A pentamelded crafted ring. I know what you're thinking. Didn't the devs basically get rid of those? After all of the new Savage jewelry comes with 2 materia slots this expansion, making it so that crafted jewelry doesn't have the same substat advantage it used to. Unfortunately for you, you've been fooled. Let me lift the wool from your eyes. Quantity of substats is important, but so is quality. And this ring has something no other piece of gear has: Materia 7 melds. These little bite-sized pieces of substats would be instrumental to the next phase of my plan. You see, my current gear set had just a bit too much spell speed. In fact, I could drop about 100 spell speed and still have the same GCD. The problem here is that the Deep Shadow ring I was wearing has about 140. However, this beautifully profane piece of crafted jewelry lets me meld 40 spell speed back in, one Materia 7 at a time. And by doing this, I created 100 extra secondary stat out of thin air. Yet another damage gain. Of course, I traded a bit of mind and vitality for this, but who cares that my heals are a little weaker or if I have a little less health? Not me, that's for sure. After all, if I die, I'm dragging the party down with me. So there I had it, an incredible gear set overflowing with forbidden power. The catch? It still contained one awful blemish, that piety-encrusted globe. But deep down, I knew there simply wasn't anything I can do. In gearing, there is one undeniable law, and that's that weapon damage reigns supreme. Sure, I could consider downgrading to a worse weapon, but even those have piety too. I would have done anything, no matter the cost, for a weapon with crit and no piety, but no such option made itself available to me. Or so I thought. You see, there's a legend of a man not unlike me who also gave his life to searching for gear sets of unspeakable power. However, he walked a road even darker than mine. The path of the Black Mage. Like me, he tossed all of his preconceptions about gear aside in his quest for power, and by doing so, he stumbled across something magnificent: the min-crit Black Mage best in slot. While the first rule of gearing is that weapon damage reigns supreme, in the realm of secondary stats, crit is king. The more of it you have, the better it gets. It's seemingly a perfect stat, but Black Mages were cursed by a critless weapon. This nameless adventurer reasoned that if crit became stronger, the more of it you had, then it was weaker, the less of it you had. And since Black Mages were cursed by this critless weapon, didn't that make crit worse for them than the other casters? And following that chain of reasoning, he decided that instead of fighting a losing battle by maximizing crit, he would instead seek to minimize it. And so, a gear set was born. Reading this story, I realized that the two of us were more similar than I had initially thought. If Black Mages were cursed by a critless weapon, then so were Astros. What if I followed in his footsteps? I had to try it. I ripped all of the critical hit melds out of my gear, one by one. What did I replace them with? Direct Hit, of course, the most forbidden healer substat. And the crazy thing is, it worked. Here in my hands was the most powerful healer gear set ever created, a testament to trial and triumph. In this set was evidence of not only the unique challenges that our kind face every day, but also confirmation that we can conquer them. Contrary to what I originally thought, the weapon was not a blemish in an otherwise perfect set. It is a catalyst, and through it, the set's greatest weakness became its greatest strength. But to only look at the product of this story is inherently unfair. To do so would be to consider conquest without the requisite sacrifice. In doing so, we forget all the lives we lost along the way. But through this loss, I have gained more than I could have ever imagined. Don't get me wrong, I have my regrets. It's lonely up here, and my thoughts often turn to wondering whether I made a mistake. But in the end, this is the path I chose for myself, and I wouldn't have it any other way.